Every year we give something for you, a food for thoughts for Christmas and New Year to think about, to reflect. And this year we decided to invite a person who could give us an insider view about new technologies and artificial intelligence, but definitely much larger view on this perspective of new normal after pandemic is over, because we strongly believe certain things will remain with us. Some things will disappear because it's just now because of pandemic, but it will be very interesting to hear what our guest will tell us. Nanna-Louise is Microsoft person now. Nanna-Louise Wildfang Linde. Nanna-Louise, welcome. You are with us already.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
I hope we can.
That's good. I'm very glad to be here. It was great sitting here listening to the Polish language. I don't know, I always felt a little bit connected to Poland since my good friend Piotr, who's actually also on this call today, gave me a book about, you know, how I could better understand a Polish person. And in that book, I actually found quite a lot of similarities to Danish people. I'm from Denmark myself. You know, the way that we are completely obsessed about weather forecasts and a lot of other things where I felt really, you know, connected to the Polish people. So too bad I'm not there in person, but hopefully there will be a new opportunity for us to meet in person. I would certainly love that.
Hopefully, I will just explain. Maybe you can better tell us your position in Microsoft. You are responsible for Central Eastern Europe.
Yes.
But your background.
So maybe, yeah, I'm responsible in Central Eastern Europe for legal and government affairs. Microsoft kind of divided the world into 14 areas, and Central and Eastern Europe is one of those 14 areas. Where I then the responsibility for legal affairs and government affairs, and I have in Poland a government affairs manager and her team, as well as a legal director as well. So very big area.
I just want to ask you if are you in any case involved also in the EU discussions about, you know, new taxations and new, you know, digital tax and all these payments which we all expect to happen?
I'm familiar with the discussion, but I would not be able to answer very sophisticated questions around it. We have a team in Brussels that is dedicated to these questions.
Okay, fine. So yeah. The floor is yours, Nanna-Louise.
Thank you so much, and really thank you for inviting me. I'm super honored to be able to be asked to give this speech, and also very humble. I see some familiar faces here. I know I have a lot of, you know, smart people in the room. I've read your report on AI. I learned a lot of new things, and it's very inspiring to read it. I don't have the crystal ball for the future, but I hope I can inspire a little bit, and actually hope that I understand we have like 20 minutes for Q&A after the speech, and I really hope that this will be also comments and reflections and not only questions to me, because it's so much more interesting to have a little bit of a dialogue. So yeah, as you know already, this has been a year like no other in our lifetime, and a pandemic year during which, you know, fundamental questions have been raised about our society as we know it, about how we live it, how we work, how we learn, and how we care for others. And it prompted much debate and discussion that would surely have thrilled our existentialistic compatriot in Denmark, Søren Kierkegaard. Maybe you know him, 150 years ago, when he grappled with the notion of self, unity of purpose, and society. And I think indeed that the pandemic has taught us much with many learnings from business and society more broadly. But before I really get started here, maybe it's something I forgot, let's not, let me just say that the recent pandemic above all is of course a human tragedy where many have lost loved ones, and many more have put themselves to risk to save others. And I think precisely because of this huge cost, it's really vital that we learn as many lessons as we can from this pandemic. And I think among the many concrete lessons learned, there are also some more deep-rooted existentialistic ones. We saw a shift and widespread embrace of digital ways of working, including here in Europe. And I think in long run, it will help to strengthen companies and provide opportunities for far more efficient resource utilization. And there's no doubt that this crisis has accelerated a development that has already begun. For example, AI in healthcare, and I will get back to that later. And there's no doubt that the everyday life looks and will look different for many companies. I don't think it's possible for us to return to previous ways of doing business after this pandemic. I think the great example here is education. I think serious remote learning started globally already before the pandemic, but of course the pandemic has accelerated online learning, our need to acquire new skills, reimagining the way of learning from offline to online. Poland as a country was quite fast in reacting. I remember the Warsaw local authorities, they equipped all primary schools and high schools with Microsoft technology really, really quickly and enabled them to continue education straight from their homes. Just this project covered 25,000 teachers, 250,000 students, and 800 schools. So it was quite impressive. But we actually did have many governments reach out to us when the pandemic started and wanted to hear, how fast can you set up an online education system? Because this is not something we really prioritized in the past, but now really, we need it, and we need it, this week. So this was very massive. And I think among the more essential existential lessons is the one that mankind can overcome so many things if we stand together and help each other, regardless of political orientation, and really hand in hand governments and companies and NGOs together. And I think the future will involve even more increased flexibility in this way and important choices from also, for example, on AI and ethics. I think only with really working together with empathy and curiosity, we will be able to make the right choices and progress together and be better prepared to handle future crises like this, whether it relates to health, climate change, or other pressing society issues. And as I see it, many learnings and lessons can be summed up in really one word, and that's resilience. Resilience is a concept really with roots in both biology, psychologically, and social sciences. It's about how nature, human beings, and indeed societies can cope with really extreme pressure. Do we break or die? Or do we absorb the challenge and the feedback we get and turn them into learnings, change, and development? And I think in many ways the pandemic has demonstrated both human, commercial, and social resilience. And I was thinking today to highlight a handful of examples which I find really particularly interesting. But first, I really always like to go a little bit back to history because it can teach us so much. And pandemics have really been with us since the dawn of mankind. Some have escalated to global levels, like COVID-19 being the latest. And as we look back in history, we can also reflect on what previous pandemics have taught us. The introduction of agrarian communities led to an increased scale and spread of diseases. So widespread trade routes created the spread of epidemics such as malaria, influenza, smallpox, all of which appeared during that time for the first time. And also as humans settle in larger cities, increased contact with various populations of people, animals, and ecosystems, pandemics like tuberculosis and plague increased. And in every pandemic, there's been learnings leading to new preventive measures and innovations. The sewerage system in our cities, personal hygiene, safe infrastructure, research, vaccination. This is all resilience on a very practical level. We learn from pressure, we innovate, and we overcome. So really two important learnings from history, the role of science and technology, and how planning and implementation early in the process can help mitigate the effects of the pandemic and create new solutions and move on in a better place. I think another example of resilience is, of course, technology. And as a technology company, we have seen really firsthand, like I explained also before, how the pandemic accelerated the pace of digital transformation. Suddenly, those who had not prioritized this area, they were just forced to do it. We really learned so much also as a company the past 10 months. I would say for Microsoft itself and us as employees, it was a relatively seamless transition. We are very used to work from home. We're used to use all the range of tools such as Microsoft Teams. We launched a new management system, which enabled us to streamline our own processes and enable our customers as well. But above this, it was really a priority for us to ensure our customers that they could go on working, and particularly those providing like critical service, working as first responders, that they could make the transition really quickly. And the schools was another priority, like that we really tried to help them get online schooling up and running really fast. What we also saw during the pandemic is the changes in which we communicate with each other, and I think you will all agree, both privately and work-wise. And you would think that working from all these dining tables and kitchens and home offices would mean that we are communicating maybe less, but really the messages that we send and the way they communicate has really skyrocketed during this pandemic. And the use of Teams, for example, have in some countries increased by 4,000 to 5,000%. So really, really, really significant. And it's true that we're using technology like never before. Even for a tech firm, this innovation in daily use has really been enormous and a great leap forward, both internally and externally. I think a leading example has also been the healthcare industry, which has really been in the center, of course, of the pandemic, and which have speeded up the need for healthcare innovation. They have, needed to be more agile. They had needed to find new ways of working and also kind of get intelligence about this pandemic to grapple and find the best way to handle it. There was one example maybe that I can mention that was from Romania. So it was a company called Regina Maria. It's one of the largest healthcare networks in Romania. I think it's quite recognized worldwide. They have 12 international accreditations for medical excellence and patient care safety. And they really bring, they operate in 70 locations with more than 6,000 employees and offers complete medical care to more than 4.2 million patients. And they, to really make their medical services more accessible, they opened like a virtual clinic in Microsoft Teams. In just 10 days, they rolled it out, and the telemedicine service has powered now more than 130,000 virtual consultations in just 7 months. So this has opened up like a new critical healthcare lifeline, you may say, making it possible for Romanian citizens located also in remote areas to receive care from doctors and experts, no matter where they are. So I think that's a great example of something new that has arisen. I think a third example of resilience is and should also be commercial. As with every business on earth, from the smallest startup to the biggest company, the tech sector has also needed to reset and refocus. The pandemic has made it critical for us to face situations and decisions that like never before. And there has been mainly 2-3 reactions. One has been that it has become really evident that you have to prioritize relationship building over sales numbers. Maintaining a healthy sales pipeline during these turbulent times is incredibly important and very difficult. And with supply and demand all of a sudden twisting in new and unexpected ways, sales team, they had to prepare themselves for really dramatic market change. And one lesson for them was to prioritize relationship building and deeper understanding of the client needs. And I think another learning or reaction was, the need to create more flexible development strategies. It goes hand in hand a little bit with the other topic. Like traditional R&D development departments are used to having like really a long runway. And with the current situation and changes happening so quickly, organizations need really the flexibility to pivot strategy and products in order to confront new challenges. And often this means swapping the typical like top-down learning management strategy in favor of a more collaborative one, in hand with the customers. And then, of course, helping customers teams get comfortable at home. As we all know, one of the biggest effects of coronavirus had, that we were all forced to work from home. So this sudden transition to working remotely has really also been a huge adjustment, both for companies and employees. I think there is, in Microsoft as a company, we really we try to, with all these development in technology and all these new, opportunities to use technology and AI, we are quite committed as a company to find a way to have a development that is really digital sustainable, and ensuring a more, digital and resilient Europe. We acknowledge that we have a responsible as a tech company for the development to go in the right direction, and the particular role that the tech sector needs to play in supporting also inclusive economic recovery, and in helping European countries through this need for digital transformation, with technology that fits also for Europe and not only for the US, and which will make Europe more resilient to a pandemic again. And I think when we look ahead to the next phase, there's an opportunity for the industry and the private sector to partner with government to establish like really a trusted foundation for sustained economic growth and greater social equity, a more sustainable environment, and increased resilience for our social and economic institutions long after this pandemic is over. In every country that we operate, we see communities with the opportunity to flourish in new ways thanks to the power of the cloud. AI is one example. And cloud-powered technologies are increasingly the foundation really for our lives. creating new businesses, new business model, as well as changing the way we access services, we communicate, and the way that we entertain ourselves. But there are also real challenges with new technology, and especially with AI. We continue to witness cyber attacks by states attacking each other, and nation-state attacks on citizens, on critical infrastructure, and even the institution of democracy. We read almost on a daily basis about criminal hacking of companies and governments to steal private and sensitive information of customers. People are concerned about loss of jobs. They lose their job to robots or automation. And there are a lot of people who are rightly worried about this development. And it is a responsibility not only for the tech companies, but I think all of us, to find the right balance between, leveraging all the new opportunities and still, finding the right fundamental principles that we want to build our society on. I think that the question is that what we used to say in Microsoft is that the question is not what technology and AI can do, but the question is what it should do. And all development is not good, and we still have the chance to impact where we want to go. And there is, in Microsoft, a firm belief that there are some fundamental principles that we have to agree on, adhere to, when it comes to the future of technology. And there's still a lot of work to do. It's a big responsibility for every government, for every business, for every technology company, and it certainly is a big responsibility for Microsoft to get this all right. So I was asked to touch upon a little bit what the new normal would look like and what changes will remain with us. And as I said in the beginning, I don't have the crystal ball, and I actually would like to hear some of your point of view as well. What will stay, what will go away, what will we need to rebuild, imagine. And I think, as you have heard by now, I don't believe that we will go back to normal. I think resilience is about constant development as human beings, of our organization, of our companies, our society. And I think that our sense of community has become stronger than ever all over the planet. It's like we have faced the same challenge worldwide. And though we'll need to rethink fundamental aspects of society, of our economy, of our lives, education, healthcare, preparing the workforce of tomorrow with new skills and so on, the need for reflection and empathy and frankly, ethics have become stronger than ever. We'll hopefully soon be able to have like a vaccination, so that at some point this pandemic will be contained and under control. Until the next come, hopefully not. We hope that our sense of community, empathy, and really shared values across countries, sectors, and societies will endure. And I think for both businesses and society, the new normal will be really more flexible. And I hope that it will stay this way, more flexible, more free, more inclusive when it comes to, create opportunities for all. And I think what this experiment, this tragic experience has taught us is that habits and preferences, they can change. They can change overnight if the circumstances dictate you to change. And our previous reality and commonly accepted norms, they will continue to be questioned and challenged from now on. And I think, for instance, office workers who have long considered working from the office to be more productive have discovered that things which make it less productive are those that they have missed the most. You know, that chatting over the coffee machine or lunch in the canteen with the colleagues or stopping by somebody's desk to swap gossip or talk about football, you know, that's the things that maybe they didn't understand was the value of going to the office, but that they now understand that this has big values. And they found out that they can, you know, work can often be done, at least some of it, very well remotely. And the discipline of, you know, back-to-back video calls have many of us working harder, or at least more intense. And this is not saying that going to the office is a bad one, but I think the common perception of working abroad has to have been changed during this time. And the same a little bit like, you know, going shopping or going to get entertained, you know, it's about going to the car and going to the shopping mall. Well, that can also be done remotely. And I think that's also a change that will remain. People will do more online shopping than before. It's interesting to think about changes, for example, new technology or acquiring new skills. You know, some people will do this really quickly and with a lot of enthusiasm, and others not. But I kind of feel that this time, you know, there was no option not to change. You know, everyone was just forced to change. There was no choice. And I think it's the same a little bit with the workforce of the future. There is really no option to not acquire new skills if you want to survive and you want to have a job. And I think at the same time also, I think governments, they need to work with private companies and to find new solutions. And I think that's one of the learnings also that will remain, you know, that we have to come together to find common solutions. So let's learn this. You know, we have the chance now to consider new choices, new options, new possibilities, and that these new opportunities and possibilities can lead to new outcomes. And we should really keep some of the good changes that have come. So the path. Let me end by saying this. You know, the path forward, this new normal, will not always be easy. But I'm actually quite reassured and optimistic by the opportunities and the possibilities that lie ahead, and how technology and the tech sector can help play a really important role, working with all stakeholders to build really the future and resilient world that we want to live in. And let me end on a positive note. Something I always tell my team and those that I work with, you know, in every change lies an opportunity. Or as Søren Kierkegaard would have said it, you know, there's nothing more fragrant, more sparkling, more intoxicating than the infinity of possibilities. So in other words, then and now, it's all about resilience. Let's remain excited to explore this infinity of possibilities together in this new normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Nanna-Louise. Thank you. Thank you very much. I have many questions, but first of all, guys, that's time for you. Everybody can ask questions. I encourage you to use this time we have. I'm just curious about the words you were using, because you said resilience, but you mentioned also many other words which I find really crucial, like flexibility, like sustainability, cooperation, partnership, but also no choice, no option. And you also mentioned that you expect many more crises to happen. So let's repeat after Winston Churchill, let's not waste any good and deep crisis. Agnieszka, please.
Yes, thank you. So, well, I think that we are experiencing the times when artificial intelligence is going to be this new normal at some point. And I wanted to ask you as a lawyer, can you think of areas where you think artificial intelligence solutions should be, areas that should be exempt from the implementation of artificial intelligence solutions, such as, for instance, I can think judiciary system, where it may be quite doubtful whether algorithms should make decisions whether somebody is guilty or not, and things connected with like ethical issues like that. So could you comment on that, please?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really great question. And the example that you are using there, it's definitely one that I would agree with. I hadn't thought about it, but I would definitely agree with that. I think that the fundamental thing that we should remember is that artificial intelligence should help us do our work better, but it does not replace us. You know, so we should use it in the right areas. I think personally, I'm quite excited about the use of AI in healthcare, where, you know, doctors are still the ones making the decisions, but they will be supported with much more information and much more algorithm, much more, you know, intelligence and knowledge, enabling them to make a more correct and better decision. And I think that's the way I look at it, as a tool for human beings to take the right decisions. And that would be the same as lawyers, I guess. You know, maybe that's an easier access to, you know, what previous court decisions have said about a topic. And you will get, you know, a lot of intelligence to base your decision or your judgments on. But it's not an automated process. You know, you cannot just put a lot of information into the computer and then get a result. I would not recommend that. Actually, when it comes to AI, Microsoft is, we are talking to governments all around the world about the need for regulation. We actually think that we need more regulation around AI because the development is really fast, and it's not the role of the technology companies to decide, you know, how the future should look. You know, it's a good system in our part of the world to have, you know, parliaments and politicians to create the rules and the legal framework. So we think we should do that also on AI. And we have ourselves developed like 6 principles that we think such regulations should build on. And that's all about, you know, of course, privacy and security, reliability and safety of AI. But it's also about fairness, to make sure that the algorithms are fair and trained in a non-discriminatory way. It's about inclusiveness, that we make sure that this new technology is accessible for everyone, also if you are maybe, you know, disabled. And it's about having some requirements on, especially those that develop the technology, to be transparent about how they train the algorithm and be accountable in the end for what they have built. And I kind of want to say one more thing that I was thinking about when you framed your question is, it's not only about where we want to use AI, it's also about who we want, you know. Technology can be really useful. Let's take AI. AI. Let's take a facial recognition. It's a really nice tool, and it's helping us, you know, log on really fast on the computer. And there's just a lot of great use of facial recognition technology. But what we don't want, and that's what actually we have refused to sell this technology, is to put it in hands of non-democratic governments where they use it to survey their population. So, you know, that's again the ethical aspect that I think is really important. But that was a long answer to your really good question.
Thank you, Nanna-Louise. We have another question. Piotr Marczuk, please.
Cool, thanks. Hi, Nanna-Louise. Thank you for a really insightful speech. Yes, I remember we were always kind of discussing about technology and impact on society, and at the end of the day there was a question, what kind of approach do we take? Are we more optimistic? Are we more pessimistic? Is the glass half full or is it half empty? And I think today, when we talk about this post-pandemic situation, or still maybe not so much post, and the technology role, I am also asking myself this question: do we need to be more optimistic, more pessimistic, or where do we see the flaws of technology? And one of the areas I would like to focus on right now is actually education, because as much as technology helped in this initial phase of the pandemic, with Teams booming up and everyone going into remote kind of schooling system and stuff like that. Now, more and more, we hear what are the drawbacks of this system when kids from the first grade or second grade are sitting day by day behind their computer, and they need to learn the material which normally they would learn sitting in a class in person. And obviously no one knows what will be the consequence of this system that we have today in 5-10 years time, but I think no doubt about it, there will be a consequence. How those kids that are today sitting for a full year behind the computer, how they will be behaving on a job market. What will be the impact? So on one hand, this technology helps. On the other hand, this technology is the only tool today with all the negative consequences that we don't even identify completely. And you also mentioned that coronavirus speed up the technology adoption. At the same time, technology adoption speed up coronavirus, because people are traveling all over the world, and therefore the pandemic, quickly jumped from China to US, and now we have the problem there. Yes, so I think the sustainability discussion about technology needs to understand those both elements. That having only the technology as a tool, because we cannot hug each other, and this is actually the element that I'm missing so much. Having only technology in our hands, probably in 5-10 year time, will also show that there are some flaws, simply speaking. There are some mistakes, there are some bad behaviors that this situation is causing right now, despite all the great technology we have.
I think this is such a good comment, Piotr, because there is a lot of bad impact, I think, also from this pandemic. And even though I work for Microsoft, it's not like I think all technology development is good, actually. I actually got a little bit scared when I read the report, I must admit. I'm not sure I want all that to happen. But I think you are right. The social skills and the fear of touching each other that we kind of tell our kids, that does worry me a little bit. And I'm really hoping that on the other hand, this generation that has been used to having no limits to what they could do, everything is possible. So that's also a point of view that some people say it's a good learning for them, that, there's sometimes you just have to, restrict yourself, and you have to, do something that benefits the whole society, namely stay home and don't see anyone. But yeah, I agree very much with you. That's it's really, really interesting to see, how does this impact the generation that grows up now, that really was in a critical age when this happened in terms with their development. And I have myself kids, that I think, okay, it's a very different world and way of living that they have at the moment. I mean, I'm probably the one that has changed my life the least, despite from traveling much less. But for the kids, it's very, very big difference.
I just mentioned that Nanna-Louise refers to the report we just launching today, the report written by Zbyszek Gajewski and our team about the world with artificial intelligence in 2025. What will be the perspective? So we'll talk about it more after the lecture, we'll present the report to you as well. Witold Kołodziejczyk, once again, if you unmute, if you are able to unmute yourself, maybe you will be able to put the question. And I encourage the others also, if there is anyone else who want to speak, that's the moment. Well, I have a question actually, Nanna-Louise. You just said it's really shocking that the use of Teams, this application we are using now, and the application I'm using as a professor at university, you know, to teach, and I had to start learning how to use it just in one day because we had a switch immediately at universities in Poland, that you had an increase by 4,000 times. This is
in some countries, we had an increase of Teams users of 4,000 or 5,000%. Yeah.
So my question would be a business question. How did you handle this? I mean, as Microsoft?
It was actually not without big difficulties because we didn't have the capacity for that big leap in, when the pandemic came. So we did different things. We advised some customers that we moved their data to other servers in other countries. So we had to move a little bit around to leverage the capacity. And another way that we addressed the sudden need was that we simply gave Teams for free to certain customers like schools and NGOs, so that we just rolled it out really quickly without, you know, complicated price, you know, purchase procedures and so on. So, but it's true. There was problems, and there was also you know, it also went down a couple of times where we couldn't really, you know, adapt to the sudden increase. But just to, you know, this increase in those numbers, that was only a few countries that we had such a big. But you know, in some countries we didn't have much Team usage. And suddenly, you know, everyone was dependent on using Teams. So it went from very small numbers to big numbers overnight.
Well, we are monitoring this because we are covering this new normal subject, and we also cover statistics. Not all the companies want to even share statistics. Like Zoom, for example, they just don't even, you know, publicly say how many users they have now. Yeah. But it was definitely an increase as well. We also know that, and we write about it in our Think Tank magazine, so we'll talk about it also later, but we have incredible number of users now of the internet and social media. Like Facebook, it's 2,700,000,000 people. We don't have a state who would have so much population. So my question is,
many technology companies, they are afraid to talk about this because it's not so nice that you make money on a tragedy like this. You know, that you suddenly, your business is more successful than before. You know, it's not something that they want to talk about. So I've been asked actually many times, you know, it's not nice that you earn money and it's a pandemic and you shouldn't, you know, be successful when others are suffering. And it's true, you know, it has been a good year for technology companies, but we're trying to pay back with some of our, you know, skilling initiatives that we are offering governments, and with, you know, this idea of free usage of Teams and other philanthropy projects where we try to, you know, help societies and give a little bit back. So that's what we're trying to do, but it's a sensitive topic.
Right. Well, we were asking also about your comments because of two reasons. You are actually in Microsoft now, but you have a background also, you know, and you are responsible also for the government relations. So you deal with both, actually. So I just want to have your comment as being insider, you know, do you see any progress as far as, but in real concrete terms, as far as cooperation between the business, especially technology business, and the governments, the states, especially in Europe, of course, we are interested in it. And if you can comment also, because you come from Denmark, which is the Western and, Scandinavian country. You said it's very close to, well, maybe Polish way of thinking in many areas, but what about this cooperation? Do you see, because you're responsible for Central Eastern Europe, do you see a difference?
I think I see really, if you look at Europe, I see really two trends. I see one trend that is, little bit let me call it nationalistic, like European wish to, develop technology in Europe and maybe cut down a little bit on the influence from the US and from China.
So it's like Airbus and Boeing.
Yeah, and the Gaia X and so on. I think there is, a trend there. But I do also see another trend, and maybe especially in Central and Eastern Europe, with governments reaching out to companies to find, to get help on how to challenge society problems with technology. And get help also with the topic I talked about before. How should we regulate AI in our country? And what we did in Poland and other countries is that we took the initiative together with some partners. AmChamp was one partner, and we said, it's really not good if it's only Microsoft and other tech companies who decide what AI solutions should be available and used in a country. It's not good either that it's just the government doing that, because maybe they don't have all the information or the intelligence to really find the right solution. So really the best thing we can do is to come together. Tech companies, governments, NGOs, people from the academia. So what we did in Poland and other countries is that we collected a small group of really important, influential people from government, from academia, from tech companies, from other companies. And we sat down in a room. That was when you could meet physically. And we said, what kind of AI solution and technology do we want to leverage in Poland? What is it? What are all the great opportunities we have with AI? What is the most important for Poland to leverage? And what are the things that we don't want? What's our fear? What is the things that we want to regulate to avoid AI being used for? Mm-hmm. And based on those two discussions, what is then the regulation that we need? And this group came together and came up with some ideas of how to regulate AI in Poland and in the other countries where we had these. So that's at least one example of the governments being really interested and willing to get input from a variety of stakeholders into legislation. And I think, and I said that also in my speech, I think it's the only way forward, that we come together, because none of us has the solution, and none of us can solve all the challenges, the pandemic or environment or what else, alone. It's only coming together that will benefit us, and
especially if we expect more crises, other also issues, not only pandemic, to happen in the future. Janusz Kamieński.
Thank you, Małgorzata. Thank you, Nana, for your interesting lecture. Good evening, everybody. I have a question to Nana. During your speech, you have many times raised the word resilience and how important it is, which is, of course, very obvious. And you have reflected on that word a bit in the background of technology, which is obvious because you work for a huge technological company, and you have also shared with us the needs for our IT resilience, like for instance being able to deal with cyber attacks. What are the ways IT companies can use their solutions in the way that can grow people resilience, not only IT resilience, but people resilience? Can you hear me?
Yes, we heard. Okay. Nanna.
Because it's people who needs resilience the most. Can IT companies deal with that?
Thanks for the question. Nanna-Louise, please.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that question, because resilience to me is really the capacity to recover from a difficult situation, right? So the question is how technology can enable people to recover quickly from technologies, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah.
And I think I already alert a little bit to that, you know, that technology, technology can be a tool that can help us, you know, during difficult times. Being it, you know, in the health sector, or being it on, you know, education, new skills. And so I see technology as a tool that can, as a powerful tool that can help human beings in times of crisis to overcome. And I think we saw this in this pandemic, that technology actually played a really vital and big role for us to continue our communication, for example, and getting access to healthcare, as the Romanian example. Or so that's how I see it. You know, a tool in depend on which kind of situation, of course, that it needs to help you. It can be a tool for you to overcome.
We have this vision of one of our members of the think tank strategic council, Marek Kamiński, a very well-known person in Poland, because he was able to conquer 2 poles, you know. He's really a traveler and explorer, and he calls it Homo sapiens plus, the era of Homo sapiens plus, which means that it should, you know, enlarge capacity of our brain, it should enlarge capacity of our body, the new technology, but not to replace us. Maybe this vision will come true. The last question to Nanna-Louise is from Professor Andrzej Blikle.
Well, thank you very much. Nanna-Louise, in the first place, I really admire your talk. And I have to say, I also admire your country. I spent a year in the computer science departments of 2 of Danish universities, and that was a great time. So after,
I'm glad.
after this,
let's say maybe, Andrzej, that Professor Blikle is very well known in Poland, because you know, the name of his name is actually a name of a very well-known company. But also Professor Blikle, not many people know that he is a mathematician, the scientist.
Mathematician and computer scientist, yes.
Oh.
Well, so after this introduction, I have a tough question. As you said correctly, software is IT, and software in particular is becoming more and more responsible for our future. At the same time, software producers, practically without any exception, force their customers to sign a disclaimer. And let me quote one very short disclaimer. The entire risk as to the quality and performance of the program is with you. Should the program prove defective, you assume the cost of all necessary servicing, repair, or correction. Do you think, are there any chances that this situation will change?
That's a legal question, actually.
Oh, that's a really tough one.
Technical and technological question, not only legal.
Yes, I think I will answer your question like this. Microsoft has changed a lot over the years to become much more humble. I think, you know, our licensing agreement and, you know, who has the responsibility, they have really changed a lot. And we have become much more flexible and much more humble over the years. So I'm sure there's a good reason for exactly the one that you cited there, but we do more and more take a more humble approach. And like I said to you, when actually the regulation that we are advocating for around AI is that tech companies should be responsible, and they should be transparent. They should transparently show, for example, how they train their algorithms so everyone can see. So I think around AI, we are taking a very responsible approach, actually, compared to others also, other tech companies. So hopefully you will be positively surprised in the future.
So maybe this will be one of these positive effects of pandemic and this time, if this will change. Nanna-Louise, we have to finish. Thank you very much for your time. And thank you all also for listening to us in English, and I hope it wasn't a problem. So now, if you permit us, we will switch into Polish. Thanks a lot, Dan, and we will follow with Microsoft the next developments of technology and AI.
Thank you very much from my side as well. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.